First of all, I want to thank my board.
And I'm glad everyone is here, still here this afternoon. Thank you for remaining. I wanted to talk about smart cities. Is everybody familiar with what a smart city is? Smart cities are cities that integrate things like the Internet of Things, 5G networks, artificial intelligence, used for metering and measuring and monitoring and operating smart cities around the world. Now, I am thinking, and what I am telling the clients that I work with, government and industry, that smart cities, I believe, are the next and future battleground for cyber warfare. And I think it's important because China, while it is not necessarily leading in terms of the quality of smart cities, it is certainly leading in terms of the number of smart cities that it's working with. Now, there are three types of smart cities. There's the China-led or the authoritarian smart city. There's the US-led, values-based smart city. And then there are environments that involve both Chinese and US technology, where these technologies are integrated. And that raises a lot of issues in terms of integrity of information, reputation risk, foreign corrupt practices violations, where the technologies may become intertwined and the values-led technologies may actually conflict with the authoritarian-led technology. So that is an issue. But essentially what China is doing is turning smart cities into mass surveillance systems. This is what the authoritarian models are doing. Again, China is turning smart cities into mass surveillance systems. Now, what is this based on? Well, China has an extensive history in this. Everybody familiar with the Uyghur problem, right, in Western China. And the Uyghurs, about 1.3 million of them have been detained and put into re-education camps on the basis of predictive policing. So the mass surveillance system that China had in place and has had in place basically will predict what crimes a dissident target will commit in the future on the basis of an artificial intelligence algorithm. And basing that on that sort of rogue or that corrupted algorithm is what is going to put large numbers of people in jail. Now, China has approximately 800 to 900 smart cities in various stages of development. Many of these are pilot programs, but clearly that's a large number that China is going to learn from. Now, the rest of the world has maybe 100, 120 smart cities that are developing, about 35 in the United States and the remainder elsewhere in the world. But these are actually going on right now. Now, last March, we were in Italy, and I was having a conversation with a government official, and I was explaining that the methodologies and the mass surveillance systems that are being developed and deployed against the Uyghurs are criminal, they're unfair, they're unjust, and yet they are widespread throughout the Western region and in that particular dissident group. And I said, this is something that the United States and Europe and other countries, must take a stand on. And his comment at the time was, well, listen, this is a China issue. We can't get involved in a Chinese domestic issue. And I said, well, look, that's actually not the case, because what China is doing is they are taking these systems, they are exporting these systems into smart cities around the world and spreading the ability of regimes overseas, and particularly any corrupt regimes, to actually target dissident groups and have the same result, the same impact as they did with the Uyghurs. But it puts a tremendous amount of control and legal authority with these governments, regardless of whether or not the governments are looking out for their populations. And that's a real problem. And his comment at that time was, well, given the fact that they're exporting this, this changes everything. So now this particular government is looking at the problem a little bit differently, and I expect a different outcome in the future. Now, many of the technologies that China uses in its mass surveillance systems are available in most of the world. High-K Vision, Huawei, ZT Corporation. These are all, High-K Vision is a camera company that's in police stations and government offices throughout Europe. It's been banned in the United States. But Huawei technology and ZTE have been banned in certain places and not others. So there's no real level of consistency about controlling smart city communications. And of course, smart cities now are all interconnected with each other, and they communicate, and this creates a very broad range and a deep archive of information that is at risk. So now, in effect, smart cities are part of the Belt and Road Initiative from China's perspective for the authoritarian-led smart cities. It's at the very upper end of Belt and Road. And that's how China sells it, as Belt and Road. But actually what it does is it actually gives a tremendous level of access to new markets for China. Now, part of every smart city is going to be various forms of electronic commerce. It can be business to consumer, consumer to consumer, government to business, but these will be really centers of commerce, which creates a tremendous amount of transactional data as well. So if we look at how information is acquired through these smart cities, one major way are these high-K vision cameras. So these cameras became to dominate the market because they were priced at an unbelievable price point. Extremely low price point, high-K vision overtook the market. There are now probably close to 800 million high-K vision cameras deployed around the world. There are about 8.1 billion people in the world, so it's a fairly significant comparison here. If we had 800 million and maybe closer to 900 million cameras by now, so it's pretty pervasive. So it's very easy for China to access this information when they're actually on the inside as a trusted partner. So what I have am currently advising a specific client for is to actually look at the contracts that they have with their smart city companies, their vendors, to see if there's any outlawed or banned technology there. And if not, is there other Chinese technology which needs to be looked at to determine the level of risk for that information. So one of the interesting things that China makes these companies do, these smart cities do, is makes the country these smart cities are located in, where China participates, is to support the One China policy. Now, the Chinese Communist Party makes it very clear, this is something that we don't hear in the United States or throughout Europe, but one thing that the Chinese Communist Party makes very clear is that they make no investment until they understand the political opportunity involved in that investment. And so they will lose money and invest money at an extremely high rate if they believe that the political or the geopolitical return is there and that the economics of that will benefit them in the long run. So I guess that's probably all I'll state at this point, since I know we have a limitation on that. Do I have a chance just to read one paragraph? So there was something very interesting from the National Defense Authorization Act that I'll close with. And it said that we must face the reality that the Chinese government is using every avenue at its disposal to target the United States, including expanding the role of Chinese companies in the U.S. domestic communications and public safety sectors. Video surveillance and security equipment sold by Chinese companies exposes the U.S. government to significant vulnerabilities. Now, this is a marketing method for China. to get into these public communication systems. They're doing it, but many smart cities, when they get into these arrangements with China, don't truly realize the risk. And so what we need to recognize is that we need to monitor these implementations, these smart cities, very, very carefully as they become more vulnerable on the basis of the vendors that they're dealing with, specifically from China. Thank you.